Before Marvel built an empire, before Nolan turned superheroes into Oscar contenders, there was Tim Burton's Batman, a dark horse blockbuster that didn't just reinvent a comic book icon, it blew the doors off what a superhero movie could be. But how did a character once known for campy dance moves, cartoon sound effects, become the anchor of a cinematic revolution? Well, this is the story of Tim Burton's Batman.
What are you? I'm Batman.
Batman's journey to the screen began long before it redefined box office records. The effort started quietly in October 1979, when producers Benjamin Melniker and Michael Uslan acquired the rights from DC Comics. Their goal was clear: steer Batman away from the bright, jokey image of the 1960s and return the character to his roots in fear, trauma, and shadows. But convincing Hollywood to shift tone wasn't easy. To break through, Uslan wrote a treatment titled Return of the Batman, visioning a serious version of the character that mirrored the moodier takes emerging in comic books. Studios weren't interested. The project found new footing in 1980 when producers John Peters and Peter Guber joined the effort. That same year, Superman 2 proved that superhero stories still had box office pull. Warner Brothers, who had distributed the Superman films, agreed to back Batman with a modest $15 million budget. A 1983 script by Tom Mankiewicz, titled The Batman, leaned into darker comic influences and nudged the budget up to $20 million, with a tentative release set for 1985. But the project struggled to lock down a direction. As the comics grew darker in the late 1970s, Steve Englehart's 1977 run helped redefine Batman as a figure shaped by fear and trauma, a vigilante haunted by loss rather than camped up by comedy. That version of the character became a reference point, not just for writers, but eventually for the studio. It took years of failed drafts and shifting creative teams, but the goal became clearer. Batman needed to be taken seriously again. The source material had already done the work, now the film just needed the right director to bring it to life. By 1985, Warner Brothers had found their director Tim Burton, who had just delivered the surprise hit Pee-wee's Big Adventure, was brought on board. That film had earned $40 million on an $8 million budget, enough to catch the studio's attention. He wasn't working alone. Composer Danny Elfman and screenwriter Julie Hickson, who was also Burton's girlfriend at the time, joined early. But the studio wasn't fully satisfied with their first draft. They turned to comic book writer Steve Englehart, whose work had already influenced earlier versions of the script, to take another pass. His draft included characters like Silver Street, Cloud, Rupert Thorne, the Penguin, and Robin. Eventually, it was trimmed down, with Penguin and Robin removed to streamline the plot. By late 1986, the project was handed off again, this time to Sam Hamm. Hamm reworked the characters, replacing Silver Street, Cloud with Vicky Vale, and Rupert Thorne with crime boss Carl Grissom. Robin was reduced to a brief cameo before being dropped entirely. Casting the lead became the film's biggest controversy. When Michael Keaton was announced as Bruce Wayne, the reaction was swift and furious. Known mostly for his roles in comedies like Mr. Mom and Beetlejuice, Keaton didn't match the public's expectations of a towering, intimidating Dark Knight. Fans were convinced the film was headed back into camp territory. Warner Brothers received thousands of letters demanding a recast, but Burton stood by his decision. He saw something haunted and inward in Keaton, a man who could wear the trauma beneath the mask without needing to project brute force. While the debate raged around Batman, the studio's attention shifted to the Joker. Dozens of names were considered, including Tim Curry, John Lithgow, Ray Liotta, and even John Glover. Robin Williams was seriously in the mix, but one name kept resurfacing: Jack Nicholson. Nicholson didn't jump in immediately. He negotiated hard, over money, over creative input, and over scheduling. As leverage, Warner Brothers signed Tim Curry to a pay-or-play deal, guaranteeing his paycheck whether he was used or not. That pressure eventually sealed the deal with Nicholson. In exchange for taking a reduced salary of $6 million, down from his standard $10, Nicholson secured one of the most lucrative contracts in Hollywood history. He received a share of merchandising, residuals, and top billing. When all was said and done, he earned close to $90 million from the film. The rest of the cast fell into place quickly. Sean Young was originally set to play Vicky Vale, but after a horseback riding injury forced her to exit, Kim Basinger stepped in just days before filming. Billy D. Williams was brought on as Harvey Dent, with hopes he might one day return as Two-Face. With the cast locked, the production moved forward, but not without tension.
I'm reading your stuff. I'm Vicky Vale.
Vicky Vale, yeah, photographer. What brings you here?
From the moment it went into production, Batman was designed to look like nothing audiences had ever seen in a superhero film. That vision started with Gotham City itself. Director Tim Burton didn't want a generic skyline, he wanted an environment that radiated menace and history. Production designer Anton Furst delivered just that. His work earned him an Academy Award for Best Art Direction, and it would go on to influence superhero world building for years. The Batmobile underwent a radical redesign. The result was something aggressive and grounded, a machine built to prowl, not to pose. The Batsuit received a similar overhaul. Gone were the bright comic book colors. In their place stood a sculpted black costume made of foam latex. The material gave Batman a statuesque presence on screen, but it came at a cost. Michael Keaton couldn't turn his neck while wearing it, forcing him to pivot his entire torso to look around, a restriction that would become infamous, but also oddly iconic. Designing the suit proved expensive and time-consuming. Over 24 prototypes were sculpted before they found the final form. By the time cameras rolled in October 1988 at Pinewood Studios in England, the production was already pushing beyond its planned budget. Originally set at $30 million, the cost climbed quickly, eventually topping $48 million. Burton later described the experience as one of the most exhausting and stressful periods of his life. Between studio pressure, media scrutiny, and high fan expectations, there was little room for error. But as filming wrapped in February 1989, the essential pieces were in place. Gotham had been built, the Batmobile and Batsuit were locked, the performances were in the can. All that remained was to show the world what they'd created. As the release date approached, Warner Bros. Shifted into high gear. They launched one of the most ambitious marketing campaigns Hollywood had ever seen. It wasn't just about selling tickets, it was about embedding Batman into every corner of pop culture. Central to the film's identity was Danny Elfman's score. With its sweeping orchestral themes and shadowy undertones, the music helped establish Gotham's mood from the opening frame. Elfman's work gave the film a signature sound, one that carried both tension and grandeur. It became instantly recognizable, reinforcing the seriousness of the film's tone. But Warner Bros. Didn't stop at orchestral drama. They brought in Prince to craft a full companion album. The result was a high-energy, funk-infused contrast to Elfman's score.
This town needs an enema.
When Batman arrived in theaters on June 23, 1989, it wasn't just a movie premiere, it was a national event. Tickets for preview screenings had sold out weeks in advance, and by the time opening day hit, fans were lining up around the block to get in. For many, the excitement had been building for months. This was their first chance to see Batman portrayed with real cinematic weight, and audiences showed up in force. The numbers backed up the hype. The film earned $43.6 million in its opening weekend, playing on more than 2,100 screens. It crossed the 100 million mark within just 10 days and ended the year as the highest-grossing film of 1989. Globally, it pulled in over $400 million. At the time, this level of success was almost unheard of for a comic book adaptation. While the public embraced the spectacle, not every fan was satisfied. One of the most debated elements was the decision to rewrite a foundational part of Batman's backstory. The film revealed that the Joker, formerly Jack Napier, had murdered Bruce Wayne's parents. Still, those objections didn't dampen the overall impact. Batman had delivered a version of the character that mainstream moviegoers had never seen before. Stylish, theatrical, and serious in tone. It silenced critics, won over skeptics, and positioned the Caped Crusader as a cultural force once again. After years of stalled development and widespread doubt, Batman had proven its point. Following its theatrical success, Batman took another bold step, one that would reshape how studios approached home entertainment. Just 6 months after its premiere, Warner Bros. Released the film on VHS. At the time, that turnaround was unusually fast for a major release. Warner Bros. Had a different idea. Rather than treat Batman as a rental-only item, they positioned it as a must-own gift. Retailers reported empty shelves within days of release. Demand was so high that restocks became a logistical scramble. The film went on to become the best-selling VHS of the year, while also pulling in huge rental numbers. For the home video market, this wasn't just a hit, it was a shift in strategy. By proving that a theatrical blockbuster could generate massive profits in the home market at a consumer-friendly price, Batman helped usher in a new model. Studios began to rethink how they timed and priced releases, and the sell-through approach gained traction. What had once been an experiment became a new standard. Batman arrived at a moment when superhero movies were still searching for legitimacy. What it delivered wasn't just a new take on a well-known character, it was a sharp break from what audiences thought comic book films could be. With its moody visuals, operatic score, and commitment to serious storytelling, it marked a shift in how these stories were told and who they were made for. The film's success wasn't limited to the box office. It reshaped studio thinking, proving that a character rooted in pulp origins could carry a blockbuster with global appeal. It also demonstrated how merchandise and marketing, when tightly integrated, could turn a movie into a cultural landmark. But while Batman captured headlines with its scale and spectacle, another kind of film was preparing to carve its place into action history. Smaller, leaner, and built on raw physicality. It didn't come with a massive marketing rollout or a globe-spanning release. It came with kicks, sweat, and a score to settle. Let's take that step. This is the story of Kickboxer. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content.